I mean, most of my life, my friends are like the normie crowd who are not interested in politics, not interested in ideas. So going to Toronto, being around Greg, being around Art Chad, CJ, it's like specifically at the studio, it was the first time I was around people who the default orientation was we're talking about ideas, right?
Mm.
And also making references to people that in my life I'm the only one,
Yeah.
who knows who it is, right? Even like Destiny, stuff like that's not most people don't know who that is. Um so it was very interesting. The last day we were there, we did a sauna ice bath combination.
Oh yeah.
It was pretty cool. I almost passed out. I was in the ice. I was submerged in ice, neck below, for like a minute and a half. And I've like gone to Colorado and sat in a lake and done that before. But this time I was unprepared and I got out and I had like the spins, like I was drunk. I know
Yeah.
you don't know what that's like, but like it was like my whole thing was moving. I had to sit there and breathe pretty hard and stuff. But that was a lot of fun. Um, but yeah, it was definitely interesting being around people where ideas was the nature of the community.
Mm.
Now, I mean, obviously, like, could I see myself well, I'm certainly going to go back and, hang out there. But I was wondering, like, is this I saw someone commented on my conversation with CJ.
Yes.
It's like, Paul, it looks like you found your tribe. Like, this is kind of the
Mm.
people, and to be fair, like I've talked about in Dallas, I don't really have that much of a community down here.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, yeah, could I see that? And it's like, yes, but there is a big part of me I am the everyman, JJ. There's a big part that just kind of likes to. Well, I want to talk about the Bears for a little bit, or I don't want to talk about ideas all the time. Not that I got that. I was never, unhappy with it there, but I could see myself. I don't know, craving the type of people I grew up around, the fraternity bro, sorority girl type person.
No,
Well,
that's fair. I mean, I sometimes feel that way as well. Like, I like hanging out with Greg and his friends, but there are certainly times like for me, it's I think more of like an age gap thing. Like there are times where I feel like, okay, these are a lot of like young people in their 20s. I'm a man in my 40s. Like there is, there's obviously going to be some sort of natural sort of tension there in terms of how fully comfortable you feel around people when there's some degree of block culturally.
yeah.
So no, I think that's natural, and I think this is also, but this is an important insight, right? Is that it is very easy to be inspired by other people's communities, and I think that's good and that's healthy and that's normal.
Yeah.
But sometimes the solution to that feeling of envy or whatnot is to not simply just integrate into somebody else's community, but to try to build something of your own where you're from, right? That is more sort of specifically tailored to your interests, your personality,
Yes.
your actual geographic location and that kind of thing. So I think that is that's
what Greg's. Like yeah, and that's what Greg said specifically. Is like we're trying to we're not trying to like go replicate our model across the country or whatever, or across other places. It's like we're just trying to do our thing here and inspire others. And and also Greg has talked a bunch about different people fill different roles in your life. Well, like clearly I was there. I was like, damn, having been around people and having been sitting in the studio with 6 other people and we're just talking about ideas and stuff, I was like, I definitely need something like this in my life because I don't have it. Right now I get a lot of it through online. So that reaffirmed it for me. I think if I was to do something or be part of something like in Texas or whatever, I don't know, it'd be slightly more right wing because I was apparently the most right wing person there, and I was like, God, guys, that's you need to up your conservative game here because I cannot be the representation of the right here, even though I obviously am, far right and all that.
Well, I mean, but he has a diverse group, right? Like, I mean, I think, and the group has grown a lot, right? Like, it's not. I think there's a certain stereotype that like sort of the Greg's sort of scene in Toronto is nothing but like the wackiest ideologues you've ever seen, right? But it's, it's a diverse group, and there's some people that are not particularly political, like Gokinaru. I don't think of somebody who's like
I love Gokinaru. Gokinaru is so like I don't know. We were talking for like I don't know an hour or so, and probably like 4 times. He'd be like, dude, that's a good point. He'd come in and shake my hand and be like, yeah, hell yeah. And then I say so he'd just come and shake his hand and be like, hell yeah, dude, that's the right point.
No, Gokinaru, he's like,
group was great.
You know, Gokinaru is like an incredibly like charming and charismatic guy. Like he just has this like,
he's super smart
energy that like really puts you under his spell. No, it's true. And like there's all these other characters too that I barely know, because, you know, Greg just keeps expanding it more and more and more as the years go on. And I think that like as communities expand, you know, they become more diverse, they become more multifaceted. I think that like the one of the important things about Greg's sort of scene in Toronto as well is that, you know, it's about creators, right? Like it's about people that are doing things, making things, you know, making content, making YouTube videos. You know, I know there's some folks in there that are not YouTubers, but, you know, the majority of them are. And I think that that's an important basis of a community as well, is that you guys are involved in activities that create a sort of natural linkage.
Yeah.
Right? And like, that's like my scene. Because like I have a studio. It's not quite as impressive as Greg's, but, you know, we have a sort of community hub here in Vancouver where local YouTubers congregate and all of that. And, you know, we are maybe less sort of like, you know, Greg's group is diverse, but there is a sort of thematic sort of unification where, you know, even if people are not all making like political videos or all like hyper ideological videos or whatever, like there's at least something of a passive interest in that sort of broad range, right? Whereas in my community, it's much more defined just by the act of being a YouTuber, and that is sort of the connective tissue. And in some ways, like, you know, that's good, because I think that's a different sort of diversity. Like when you have a sort of deep diversity of interest that is unified mostly just by the medium that you're working in. But then there are definitely times where I kind of feel like I would like to have at least a little bit more kind of like thematic community, right? Because I mean, and that's like, because it's the same thing. Like, it's one of the reasons why I like talking to you. It's why I like talking to some of these other podcasts and so forth that I go on. We all speak multiple languages, Paul, in life, you know, and we all want to have people in our lives with whom we can be fluent. And sometimes I suppose. Sometimes sometimes like the problem is that we expect to get all of those things from just one community, or even worse, when it's just like one person, right? Like this is something that I think Greg himself made a video on, right? The idea that these days a lot of people
that's what I was referencing earlier.
Pardon me? Yeah.
That's what I was referencing earlier.
No, it's like you can't get like everything in life out of just, say, your romantic partner or just your best friend or, you know, just whatever, right? And the same way you can't necessarily get everything out of just one community. I think that, you know, sometimes we have to be able to dabble in multiple. And I feel like that's kind of how I feel like I've gotten my life to a point where I can do that. But it's not to say that it's not perfect. But yeah, I mean, like if you're feeling, you know, comfortable in one scene, but maybe a little bit uncomfortable, it's not necessarily a reflection of the fact that this is not the perfect community. It's just that there'll probably be different groups that you'll
and to be clear, it's not like I'm not saying I was uncomfortable up there at all. It was the opposite. It was very much, but I could tell like I need my what would you say? I don't know, my normie friends to ground me, because then otherwise I'm caught up too much in the ideas, so to speak, you know. But
it's fun. It's interesting. It's sort of like, I'm sure you've had this experience. I know you've had this experience, right? Where it's like, you know, there's times in life where you feel like you're the most left-wing person in a group, and then there's times in life where you feel like you're the most right-wing person in a group. There's certainly times in my life where I feel like I'm the most eccentric person in a group, and then there's times where I feel like I'm the most normie person in a group, right?
Yeah, I can see that.
It's fun to kind of, but it's fun to like, it's fun and healthy to be able to wear those different kinds of hats, right? In the same way, like there's times where I feel very wealthy in a group. There's times when I feel like not particularly wealthy. There's times where I feel famous. There's times where I feel anonymous, right? It's like there's different. It's healthy to be able to sort of conceptualize yourself in this kind of like deep and multifaceted way, because we do all contain multitudes. We are all living elaborate lives. And I think any sort of routine experience that reminds you of the elaborate nature of your own identity is probably a good one.
That's fair. So when are you going to have a bunch of kids? When are you going to start your family and have 6 children?
I'm not going to have children. I don't even think I'm going to get. I don't even think I'm going to get married, Paul. I've been thinking about making a video about like being single and childless and how it has like a lot of stuff going for it, frankly. And
oh no, don't become a don't become a advocate of the child-free movement. Those
yeah,
people are insufferable.
I know. When you
yeah, even you know.
No, it's like in life, I think in general, when you start making things into like a philosophy or an identity, that's often a bad sign, right? But I definitely think that, and I want to talk about this like honestly in a video at one point. It's like sometimes your life just kind of like unfolds in a certain way. And it's like, I'm in my 40s now, you know, I've never really been in a serious long-term relationship. Obviously, I don't have children. And it's like, you know, my life is pretty good, all things considered. And it's like, maybe this is just my life, right? Like, and maybe I don't have to sort of conceptualize my life as like some problem to be solved. Maybe it's just like, this is fine. This is what works for me. There's a lot of good things I have going for me. And there's a lot of things that other people envy about my lifestyle in the same way that, you know, there's
aspects. JJ, you don't have to convince me. All right. You just have to convince yourself. And if you can get, oh, my life is great. I have everything going for me. Listen, I'll leave that between you and your therapist. Okay. I will say to whip out the evolutionary psychology thing, because you are a gay man. I mean, arguably, if the idea is evolution homosexuality is a feature of evolution, an adaptive feature, which I believe it is, then it would make sense that maybe there's certainly gay people who obviously want to have kids and all that and still have that paternal instinct, but maybe on average, like gay people have that less just because, they were wired to begin with to not be able to have kids. So it would make sense if that impulse is not there as much. And I think a lot of gay people kind of take pride in being, no pun intended, take pride in being like a good uncle or aunt to their nieces and nephews and stuff like that. And so I don't know, I've been thinking more about it. It's like I definitely need to get married and have a bunch of kids, like 9 kids, live on a ranch.
It's like but the thing is, do you feel that deep down, right? Like, do you feel that, or do you feel that purely ideologically?
From externally? No, I think I feel it. That's a good question.
Yeah,
and
because like I feel like this is, I mean, like in this right-wing culture war world of ours now, there's obviously all of these people that are like, you'll have to have like 7 kids.
All right, well, okay, hold on. To be clear, okay, yes, when I say have 9 kids, I am borrowing from that kind of zeitgeist around that. Will I have 9 kids? Probably not. Would I have like 3, 4, maybe even 5? Maybe, I don't know. I mean, I certainly want a few at least. And I do think I suppose you never know until you're but it's like.
But do you like hanging around with kids? Like, do you like playing with kids and like being like just being in their presence, right? Like,
yeah, I love kids, JJ. No, okay. Yeah. Like, it's kind of like when you like watching dogs play with each other or watching like dogs kind of zoom around. It's kind of the same thing with like 3-year-olds or 4-year-olds. I have like nephews and all that. And I don't know. It is funny. Yeah. The kids are great. And
like when you're walking, like when you're like walking around and like you see like a dad with like his little kids.
I admire that. Oh yes. I get baby fever a little bit. Okay. Yes. There is a like on the plane or something like that. Yeah. It's like some cute kid with his dad or whatever. It's like, I need to have kids.
That's good. Like, I think like that's the right motivation, right? Like if it's a sort of sincere longing.
Yeah. Not because Elon Musk said that.
Yeah, precisely.
We need to repopulate the planet, which that is true. But
and see, like for me, like I just don't really feel that. Like I feel like I have a lot of paternal energy. Like I like spending time with like younger men and being like useful to them. Right? Like being able to help out sort of younger men. And because like a lot of younger men are interested in kind of having an older friend who can like, spend time with them and give them, advice or help them analyze their life situations or even like, take them on adventures and stuff. Like there's just certain things that you can do and that people will defer to you more when you're a bit older than them. And that's like, I don't know if that's like a kind of like an uncle kind of energy, like a stepdad energy. Probably. I don't know, but there's some sort of role that I like playing in other people's lives that is a little bit paternal without necessarily being like a father. And that's important to me. And like, I'm glad that I have opportunities to do that. But yeah, it's not the same as like, oh, I must have my child, right? I must father a child, like have like an heir and this kind of thing. But again, like, I don't want to overstate it because like it's the desire to be a father is not is not quite so
Well,
tribal.
yeah.
Yeah.
And again, it just goes back, and I'm speculating, but like prior to all of the fertilization techniques that we have,
Yeah.
or fertility techniques that allow like gay men to have their own biological children, like for thousands and thousands of years, gay men couldn't have kids. So it would seem to make sense that what you're describing is like the desire to be like a paternal figure per se, without being actually literally a paternal figure.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
No, it's fine. And it's like, there has, I mean, I don't know enough about anthropology, but like there has been sort of some armchair anthropologists over the years who have, like, often like LGBT anthropologists who have sort of said, like, you know, like the gay or the lesbian person in the tribe or the village has historically played a certain role. And, you know, and sort of like before kind of like modern homophobia was created, like that there were societies in which sort of gay people fulfilled a role that was distinct from that of parent or, you know, whatever, but were still appreciated for the unique sort of things that they had. I definitely feel like this is something that just a lot of you know, sort of pundits, I don't know, philosophers, whatever, commentators, just like they don't acknowledge the existence of gay people at all. Like when people are coming up with like these grand theories of male-female relationships, of families, of, you know, the role of the family in the society, and all of these kinds of like grand sort of sweeping theories, often which involve sort of civilizational decline in one form or another, there's just often this like huge like empty space that is like gay people. And it's like, I find that like as a gay man frustrating, because it's sort of like, well, who is modeling, suggesting the appropriate role, the way that people who are a little bit different, like gay people, can sort of still be sort of important and supplementary, right? Whether that's choosing to be a gay family, which obviously many gay people do, to be gay mothers or fathers, obviously that's one role. But then there's other roles that gay people can sort of play as well. And it's just, but like when you know what I'm talking about, right? Because it's like there's so much commentary about male-female relations, the importance of families, and all this kind of stuff, and just the idea that so much of this analysis just does not acknowledge gay people, because I think they sort of add a level of complexity to concepts.
True. Well, and sure, I mean, I agree with you. I don't think it's malicious, so to speak. It is understandable. Gay people are only like what, 1 to 5% of the population. Well, so it's sort of like, this is a bad comparison, but like, you know, there's blind people.
Yeah.
And so much of what we know about society and culture and life, you know, assumes vision.
Yeah, that's fair.
So it's kind of hard to, but I get your point, and I think you're correct. All right. Well, hey, let's get into the juicy stuff.
Hold on. First, tell me a little bit more just about your thoughts on Toronto. Like,
Toronto?
Like Greg and his friends. What was your thoughts on the city? Because like I'm not from Toronto.
Yeah. Oh, I know. That's you text me. You're like, don't form your opinion on Canada just because of one city. I'm like, Toronto's great. I love Toronto.
Toronto's got a lot going for it.
Airport was nice.
Yeah.
I mean, not great, but it was decent. There's the train straight to downtown. As soon as I got out to downtown, that downtown area is cool as hell. Like very metropolitan, very bustling. I walked from the station to their studio. The neighborhoods are very. It's very Chicago-like in that I don't know if you've been to Chicago.
Yeah.
It's like the row houses and the duplexes, and it felt like that with a lot more character. I don't know how to describe it. And like the main streets that, you know, every third street is like the main street. It was more bustling. You know, there was like there was more shops. Yeah. At least in the area I was. You know, I only saw a limited part of it. It was just great. I just really liked it. And it was, you know, during winter and all that. And so obviously it was bitter cold out, but I'm used to that. But it just felt like, it felt like I was in a Christmas town, you know, like in a movie. But it was nice. It pissed me off a lot to see all these fucking French signs everywhere. I was like, excuse me, if you're going to get annexed by America, you need to fucking take those goddamn French signs and make them Spanish, okay?
Ontario is very weird like that. I mean, this really sort of gets into some weird sort of Canadian...
here we go. We're going to put a fucking trigger warning. JJ's anti-Quebecois rant incoming. Go ahead.
Well, and I mean, like, this is what I mean when I sort of say that, you know, Toronto is a great city. I like spending time there a lot. I agree. It's like, it's very sort of bustling and there's just, I mean, especially compared to a place like Vancouver, like there's just so much shopping and like just fun restaurants and just like lively nightlife, and it's just like it feels alive in a way that this city often doesn't. I'm sorry to say. It's definitely one of the great cities of the continent. But there are ways in which Toronto also embodies like certain oddities of sort of Canada and the Canadian system. And I think that there is this idea. What? Well, like the French things that you're describing, right? Like I think that there is this idea that Toronto, like Torontonians often think that like they are Canada, and like the entirety of the Canadian existence is and should be manifest by their city. And so even though, there are not very many French speakers in Ontario, there's this idea that because like Ontario and Canada are the same, and because Canada is a bilingual country, so must Ontario, and then by extension Toronto, be like a perfect embodiment of this bilingual ideal, even though these signs are not really in the service of any active demand. Just like this was a big sort of Canadian political controversy a few years ago, their provincial government built a big French language university in Toronto. And there was like zero demand for it. Like it literally had like 10 students enroll or something preposterous like that. Like it was this huge multi-million-dollar facility because it's like Toronto must have a French language school. As Canada's city in this bilingual nation, it is inexcusable that there is no French language post-secondary institution. So they build it. There's no demand for it, but it's nevertheless a monument to this kind of ideal of what Canada is, and that is very Ontario. That is very Toronto. So your sort of shock at the French signs, even though you might be trying to do a little bit of anti-Canadian trolling, it actually you're onto something a little bit deeper than I think you even realized.
That's fair. You said Winnipeg is the archetypal Canadian city, right?
I think no. Actually, here's an important point that actually gets to some deeper thoughts I have on you specifically, Paul.
Oh, great! Please.
There's differences between like being moderate, being center, and being media, right? So I think that
media, MEDIA,
median.
Oh, median. Okay, yeah.
So it's like, I think that a place like, say, Winnipeg is like a good example of like a median Canadian city. Like it is like, there's cities that are better, there are cities that are worse, but if you had to pick a random city out of a hat and then sort of like experience something that you could make reasonably informed generalizations about Canada from, I would say it's probably Winnipeg. And I feel like this is your identity as well, because I think that as much as, I listened to your long and very self-congratulatory chat with CJ, in which you sort of
we'll get to that momentarily.
But it's like, there's a lot of sort of back patting about what the perfect centrist you are and all of that, whereas I often kind of think like, no, your advantage is that you're more like the median, like you're the median American, you're the median American voter.
I see, yeah,
and all of its wonderful contradictions and ignorances and all the rest of that.
Yes, and their inherent freakazoidness. Okay, I'm gonna take a piss real quick. I'll be right back, and then we'll talk recap of the podcast.
Sure.